emotions to the brain, going out in style.
All right, guys, welcome back to Modern Day Debates. Tonight we have a really spicy one for you. We got Leslie back for the third time, and the prompt tonight with Jake Rattlesnake here defending an affirmative negative position, both of them are, is which is the problem, toxic masculinity or feminism? So Jake's going to be obviously defending masculinity and proposing feminism is the problem, and Leslie will be doing the opposite here. We've decided behind the scenes that Jake will open it up here, and then the debate format is going to be 5 to 10 minute openings that's uninterrupted, and then a 60-minute open dialogue, which at the very end will take a quick 3 to 5 minutes apiece to let them give some closing statements, and then we'll go into the Q&A. So if you guys have some questions you would like me to ask them, be respectful, super chat them, and I will get those done at the end. And then we will be doing DebateCon 9 in Orlando. We got tickets in the description. They'll be going through the comments there, so check that out. All right, guys. Jake, we will get it started. The moment you start talking, I will start your timer.
All right, so the prompt was actually masculinity is not the problem, feminism is. That's what I proposed at the start.
Well, which is the problem? So, that's what I said.
Yeah. So not toxic masculinity. That wasn't in there.
Oh, okay.
So good evening, all. I'll start my opening statement now. I'd like to welcome the audience, everybody who is over here watching the debate. Could be anywhere else in the world, but you're here with us. I appreciate that. Thank you very much to Modern Day Debate for having us this evening. It's always great to be back in this hallowed arena of oratory warfare over here. And thank you to my opponent. We did try and get Candace, but she wanted 500K, so this will have to suffice. Now, the debate prompt is masculinity is not the problem, feminism is. My opponent tonight has the very cumbersome task of making the case that actually masculinity is not the problem. But in order to get into this, we have to start by defining a few terms here. So, what is masculinity to start? Masculinity is simply a set of virtues: courage, discipline, provision, protection, agency, self-mastery, these sorts of things. These built the entire civilization and every strong civilization in human history. Patriarchy is simply the social structure that organized those masculine virtues into the functions that we love, such as men being providers, protectors, builders of civilization's infrastructure, and this structure is something that actually works. Feminism is a political movement aimed at dismantling patriarchal institutions in pursuit of egalitarianism. And so often is the case with these sorts of movements. They did not aim to reform the structure that was working. They aimed to destroy it with no viable alternative solution. And I'm going to show you tonight exactly the wreckage and demolition that was produced here. Now, the problem we have to outline as well. So the problem is this: institutions that have held society together are crumbling. For example, the family. The West has stopped having children. 37 of the 38 developed nations aren't having enough children to survive past 2 generations. Women and men are not pair bonding. Everybody seems to be unhappy with their options in the dating pool, for example, and social media is frying everybody's brain. So nearly 25 American children. I think that we should probably keep it to America, as you know, that's the main audience tonight, but we can go elsewhere if we need to. A third of them are now living in fatherless homes, a number up from 25% in the year 1960. Now, young men report daily loneliness at around 40% above the national average. 15% of men now under 30 report having 0 close friends, 5 times the rate in 1990. Antidepressant prescription drugs among teenage girls rose 130% faster than the baseline. And among young women, 18 to 25, about 57%, are on antidepressants. Among young women 18 to 25, about 57% faster. It rose about 57% faster than recent years. Now, young women are medicated for their mental state more than any generation of women before them. So, furthermore, approximately 29% of pregnancies, according to the WHO and the Guttmacher Institute, end in abortion. It's a third of my generation that has been killed by abortion. Now, my opponent tonight might try and tell you that men cause this by virtues of being masculine, or of being men, or masculine instincts, or something along these lines. I'm going to show you the opposite. Men have not stopped doing their job. Men are still doing it right now, tonight, while we debate. So men account for 91.9% of all fatal workplace injuries in America. It's a conservative estimate. They're still climbing their transmission towers and running the machinery and doing the physically dangerous work that keeps the lights on and the infrastructure standing that we all need. Where are the feminists? On the roofs, I might ask. In the gutters, fixing the power lines at 1 a.m. in a blizzard. Nowhere. They're in HR, or they're doing psychology, or interior design, or fashion. Taking photos in girl suits, making unbearable TikToks. Moreover, they're online complaining about men, and these men are the only reason that they are able to do so. These men have created the modern world and the luxuries that we know and love today. And even though we do that, we are still benevolent enough to not shut them up, even though we could tomorrow. We just let them carry on and on and on. Now, feminist theory tried to convince us that female desire for strength, status, dominance in a partner was purely a patriarchal construct, and it would dissolve once women were liberated from the oppressive shackles of their loving families. Now, when you look at what women actually choose when nobody's looking, that does not seem to be the case at all. How do we know this? Let me introduce you to A Billion Wicked Thoughts, the largest data analysis of human sexual behavior ever conducted. 2 computational neuroscientists, Ogi Agas and Sai Gadam, both PhDs out of Boston University, analyzed roughly 1 billion web searches, 1 million individual search histories, 1 million erotic stories, including what women were writing about for other women. And in women specifically, at a massive scale, one pattern dominates, and that is romance fiction, a genre read almost exclusively by women, and it is completely saturated with dominant, high-status heroes. 415 best-selling titles with the word millionaire in the name, 286 with billionaire. We've got sheikhs, we've got tycoons, we've got alpha werewolves, we've got vampires, and the lot. So, to really land this plane here, the very feminists who will be doing the TikToks with the bird hands and clapping when they're making their point about men are the ones, and the very feminists who are doing the high-pitched screams in the middle of the streets or getting their tits out in the street to protest the patriarchy by day, are by night flicking their bean to fairy porn, where the dominant Chad, vampire, or werewolf ravages the sweet, innocent damsel in distress. Go figure. So, feminism is not only harmful for men, but also to women, because the data shows very, very clearly what women are really into when it's just them alone with their desire in the wee small hours of the morning. So with that, I urge you to support this motion tonight, and I'm looking forward to opening dialogue.
All right. Thank you, sir. Leslie, we'll turn it over to you. Like the video, guys. We had a small hiccup there. It went live on the stream that was set up for 2 days ago for some reason. James fixed it. Boomer moment. I know. But everyone should have heard that entire opening by Jake. and we're all good to go now. So Leslie, whenever you start talking, I will start your timer.
First like to open and say good night everyone, to Jake and to your followers of his train of thought. I'd like to know if you actually do understand what feminism really is, because it seems that the constant narrative is that feminism is just full of a cult of man haters. So number one, of the problems that you speak of, do you actually understand what feminism is and what that has to do with the problems that you do speak of? Generally, I don't think masculinity is a problem. I think it is the ways in which society has approached masculinity where things have gone wrong. This hyper focus on um, proving masculinity has given way to skewered versions of masculinity, which are connected to a lot of society's problems. Also, when you look at the world outside of the bubble of misogyny and this game of women blaming, you see that there are a lot of things that point to today's problems. So I'm going to bring out a couple of random points right now. So let's look at technology. We went from the caveman era to the Industrial Revolution to the emergence of AI. You actually cannot compare the abilities of humans today versus the ones of yesteryear. And I actually mean this in a negative way. If technology is eliminating humans' ability to be human, then you might want to consider that it is eliminating what it means for a man to be a man. We are right now looking at generations of young boys and men who will no longer have to build, sweat, and toil with their bare hands in the same way that their masculine ancestors did. Yet you think that feminism is a problem. Social media has altered the way boys and girls, men and women interact. It has altered their perception on reality. It actually traces popularity in real time. So this can be detrimental to people who actually place value on how many people like them. It is desensitizing children and adults to a whole new level of bullying and humiliation of peers and strangers alike. Statistics are widely known to present the devastating effects that social media has on mental health, even so much as implicating it in suicide rates. Yet you think that feminism is a problem. Let's go way onto another spectrum and look at global turmoil. Countries that have been and continue to be plunged into pointless, bloody, and brutal war, repeated economic depression, widespread corruption, while being historically and presently run primarily by men. But again, for some reason, feminism is the problem. Let's go on another side of the spectrum. Look at discrimination at birth. Back in the day, families were bigger, so having a boy was inevitable. Families started having less children. Then the 1980s gave us something called the ultrasound, allowing mothers and fathers the ability to choose to have a baby in the first baby or not in the first place. So wouldn't you know that 50 million fewer girls were born? 50 million fewer girls, less girls have been born in the world since 1980. This probably sounds like I'm reaching a bit, but look at China's one-child policy, which was implemented between 1980 and 2016, where families were more likely to abort a girl fetus in favor of having a boy child. This is adjacent to the theme of unwanted girl children around the world who continue to experience barriers to education, who grow up to be physically, mentally, socially abused women with zero place in marriage and third-class status in society. But again, for some reason, feminism is the problem. This is a good time to lead into the patriarchy. Men for centuries had the monopoly on accessing all opportunities in what was part of shaping the world. Their competence, intelligence, capabilities, intentions, ambitions were never questioned or demanded to be limited. Yet when women created a movement that asked the world to give them these same simple considerations, they were not welcomed with open arms. They had to fight, and they're still fighting, to at the very least be treated with the same level of respect and dignity as their male counterparts. But somehow, feminism is a problem. For centuries, women had to ask, what's wrong with me? If I decided to speak or act like anything outside of what the patriarch's woman should be, then finally, when men were called to ask, well, what's wrong with me, via the invention of the concept of toxic masculinity, men didn't want to hear it. Toxic masculinity has actually been implicated in the alarming rates of depression, suicide rates among men, And studies show that it sits at the root of a variety of negative social behaviors like reckless driving, partner abuse, binge drinking, bullying, violent crime, and propensity to criminal activity in general. Yet again, you're trying to tell me that feminism is the problem. Marriage. Women were, and in some parts of the world, still continue to be treated like property in their marriages, subject to all forms of abuse as par for the course, and discouraged or prohibited from anything from having decision-making power in the home to earning any kind of income, making options of divorce daunting or hopeless or impossible. In 2026, toxic brands of masculine men are hyper-focused on women aspiring to only be wives, begging for us to go back to society to the days when wives were back in the home, back under their authority, and completely financially dependent upon them. This is a good time to bring up the old English law called coverture, where a married woman basically had no separate legal rights. Her father owned her first, and her husband owned her next. So it makes you wonder why all of a sudden these men want us to go back to these days. Of course, it was feminism that contributed to a mindset that gave married women more autonomy, financial independence at the very least, and at the very least, a way out of destructive marriages. But again, you think that feminism is a problem. I'm going to talk lastly about the manosphere. Andrew Wilson has over 195,000 followers. His wife Rachel has over 100,000 followers. Pearl Davis has 470,000 followers. The late Kevin Samuel had over 1.4 million followers. David Cooley and Myron Gaines both have over 2 million followers. Andrew Tate, 10 million followers. These are major figures in the manosphere, and I read up their following to give you an idea of the sheer volume of people that they are influencing with their messages that advocate for the outright removal of women's rights and the call to relegate women to be dependents living under a male authority. And other than sowing major division between the genders, they very obviously divide women into two categories. We're either brainless or evil. We're either the brainless, evil, modern woman, or we're pure, submissive, angelic wife in training. Apparently, these are options. The characters in the manosphere dangerously mislead boys and young men, and even women, to confuse misogyny as masculinity. And it is scary to think that nearly 73% of boys aged 11 to 17 are regularly exposed to this destructive content that presents demeaning, inaccurate, biased ideals of who women are and how they should be treated. Yet you think that feminism, which opposes all of this and really just all wants equality for all, is the problem. Instead of focusing on the problem of feminism or the problem of feminism, recognize that we live in a huge world where many of the most crucial problems have nothing to do with feminism. And number two, it is the toxic interpretations of masculinity that is the reason why feminism exists in the first place. So again, I ask you, what are really the problems that you speak of, and do you even understand what feminism is?
I've got a few points if we want to go straight into open dialogue here.
Yeah, we will in just a second. Just want to remind all the new people that joined because the stream title issue. Like the video on this one in case you liked the last one, but forgot to like this one, so these guys get seen by more people. And then once again, yeah, my bad for throwing the toxic in there on the prompt. Toxic masculinity wasn't in the prompt. I think I just got a previous debate Leslie did kind of mixed in my head. But yeah, so we'll go right into it, and I'll start an hour timer here. So whenever you guys start, it sounded like Jake was ready. We'll just get right into it.
Yeah, so look, there's a few points that I want to raise here. First of all, there is actually a global helium shortage at the moment caused by party balloons. So we are actually squandering a finite resource. And just so that little children can have squeaky voices at a birthday party, and you think masculinity is the problem. All ants in the whole entire world, Leslie, are weighing more than human beings combined, and not one of them pays rent. But you believe masculinity is the problem, Leslie?
No, I didn't say masculinity was a problem. I said feminism is not the problem, and I said interpretations of masculinity has been the problem.
There is a global shortage of socks that vanish in the washing machine. You ever done washing and the socks vanish and you only have one? And if we got back all of those socks, they could clothe an entire nation. But you think masculinity is the problem?
I don't know what the relation is between those two, but okay, no.
Leslie, I'm bringing up a bunch of what I'm doing here is I'm bringing up a bunch of arbitrary problems. Then I'm saying, but you think masculinity is the problem, because that's what you have to, the case that you have to make tonight. You have to make the case that masculinity is actually the problem. But what you did was you brought up a bunch of different arbitrary problems that are happening, and then you said, but you think feminism is the problem. The debate is about masculinity versus feminism. You didn't define any of them. You didn't even really tell us what the problem is. So maybe you need another minute or so to go through, give us some definitions like I did for you, and then tell us what you actually think the problem is that pertains to the prompt of the debate.
Well, you said the word arbitrary problems. I don't think the intentionally aborting a fetus just because they're not female is an arbitrary problem. I don't think
Tell me how that is the problem
let
with
me finish.
masculinity.
I don't think that creating a society where I, as a woman, am automatically relegated to being a subservient, a doormat, a dependent, and not being allowed to participate in society in the same way that my male counterparts are. I don't think that that's an arbitrary problem. The way and when I mention issues of the manosphere and the destructive messages that characters in the manosphere are disseminating to thousands, hundreds, probably millions of.
Okay, we need to bring it right back.
But again,
let me tell you.
the problem that is
linked here a little bit.
Hold on,
you have to
yeah, one at a time, guys.
You told me to say what that,
I
how
gave
that
you the
relates to
definitions,
masculinity.
Leslie. You have to tell me what is masculinity and what is the problem with masculinity, please. Because that's your position that you have to defend tonight.
Well, masculinity is basically a set of attributes and behaviors and roles that are typically associated with men and boys. And what I said was the way that society has interpreted it has given way to toxic versions of that. So that's really something that you have to look at. Because
so is masculinity toxic?
No.
Is masculinity a good thing?
Yes.
So then how are you going to argue that masculinity is the problem if you think that masculinity is a good thing?
Because I'm arguing more so the fact that feminism is not the problem. My issue is that masculinity has been allowed to be approached in such a broad way without it being identified that there are some negative aspects of masculinity that have not been addressed. And when society tried to address them via the identification of terms like toxic masculinity, a lot of men don't want to hear it. So if you want to look at the good and bad of you have to be able to look at the good and bad of something in order to be able to understand, is it problematic? Is there ways that it could be problematic? So that's why I don't think that masculinity in general is a bad thing, but you have to look at how society has interpreted it historically and still present, and because of skewed versions of masculinity and individuals that are passing on negative.
All right, with this prattle, we need moderator. We need to like rein in the prattle a little bit.
Yeah, but you asked me to explain
it needs to be a back and forth.
Wasn't sure how long or how much of that explaining.
All right. Do you understand what I just said?
So,
do you understand what I just said?
If the debate prompt tonight was femininity is not the problem, toxic masculinity is the problem, then you could go with that. But you have to make the case that masculinity is the problem and feminism is not the problem. We can get into the feminism thing, feminism being the problem and not the problem. But like, I think that I have to appeal to the moderator here and say that she does have to make the case that masculinity is a problem. And it can't be like some sort of arbitrary nebulous definition of masculinity where somebody takes it and like applies their own sort of standard to it. She has to make the case that masculinity is a problem. Like I'm going to make the case that feminism is a problem.
Yeah, what I'll say to that is if she was getting there, all I'd ask Leslie is that we try to shorten your description to be a little more succinct so he has something to actually tangle with. You very well may have been right there getting there, but from what he's saying, I feel like I'm getting the feedback we need to speed it up a little bit to where he has something concrete that he can argue against and not kind of a big description.
I can get we can go over masculine attributes if you'd like. So what are some of the masculine attributes that are negative, that are creating the problem that makes you believe that masculinity is the problem?
The idea that a man has to prove in excessive ways that he's a man, and when the concept of what it means to be masculine is skewered into something negative, which is what characters in the manosphere do. So that's why I said it is the approach to masculinity that has been problematic. And you have to address if there are individuals that are looking at masculinity and saying that the only way to be masculine is to have control over a woman, is to treat them as dependents or subservient doormats, that they have the final authority over women, that's a problem. So that's where I focus on how masculinity is more of a problem because of what it's devolved into. And then I focus on why feminism is not a problem.
All right. So essentially, your position here is that manosphere content creators are the problem and feminism is not the problem.
Manosphere is one of many problems that I mentioned that have contributed to problems in society. But you're hyper focused on feminism, so I'm trying to
Well,
get
I
you
have my own
a broader
definition
view.
of masculinity here, and like, would you disagree with my definition here? That it's a masculinity is best defined by a set of virtues, including courage, discipline, provision, protection, agency, self-mastery, stoicism, all of these sorts of things.
That's open to
So just for
interpretation.
example, like when I speak about femininity, I'm speaking about, women who are, feminine by nature. They're caring, they're kind, they're loving. I think femininity is an inherently positive thing. Just like I think masculinity itself is an inherently positive thing because it embodies all of those virtues that I just named. So would you disagree that masculinity is defined by those virtues? Or do you think that masculinity itself is negative?
No, masculinity itself is not negative. I think what's ironic is that all the traits that you mentioned is just what society associates with being a man, but it's not necessarily only restricted to it's not only restricted to men. Traits are not gendered, but masculinity is basically just traits that are associated with being a man. So sorry, I'll stop there.
So you think that, for example, violence, would you say that that's something that's masculinity that encompasses is in the definition of masculinity?
No, I think that approaches to masculinity and the way the patriarchy has caused ideas of masculinity to be ingrained in society, it's actually at the underbelly of why men actually are more violent or more perpetrators of violent crime or in criminal activity as a whole than women.
So you're talking about traits, like I'm trying to be as charitable as possible, but you're talking about traits that are more heavily associated with men than women.
That our society commonly associates with men.
So, for example, like behavioral patterns and everything that are more closely associated with men than women.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So then, would it make sense for me to say that femininity is aborting your children and gossip and reputation destruction and innuendo?
No.
It wouldn't. Okay. So I think we've essentially conceded this whole part of the debate.
I know gossiping is seen as a kind of more feminine trait, but that's really the only piece that I would take out of that
Right.
that is associated
I also
with.
wouldn't associate that with femininity, right? I would say that those are things that females tend to do more, but I would say that femininity in and of itself is a virtuous thing. And I think that masculinity in and of itself is a virtuous thing. That's why, just a little word to the wise, in the future, if you do accept a debate about this sort of thing, be careful of the prompt, because with this prompt, you have to say that masculinity is the problem. But we're going to have to let it slide, or else we're just going to be going around in circles. So we can get into the feminism part of things if you would like. So I want to actually hear your opinion about the case study that I laid out. Have you ever heard of this book, A Billion Wicked Thoughts?
No.
So basically, like it is one of the largest case studies that they've ever done of people's actual desire. And I actually heard you in a previous debate speaking about the kinds of guys that you date. And you were saying that you date guys who are, strong and competitive, and you tend to look for alpha males. Am I correct in saying that?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that verbatim, but I'm attracted to masculine men, if that's what you're trying to get at.
That's good. I'm glad that you admit it, because sometimes I'll get on these debates and women will be like, "Oh, it doesn't matter about how tall he is, or it doesn't matter. It's bullshit." Women love masculine men, and this is basically shown, but it's shown to an extreme here, because women, as far as I can tell, generally tend to lie about what they like Luckily, you're not lying about this. But when you actually study what they are interested in, what they're sexually aroused by, it shows that they are really sexually aroused by this sort of like fairy porn, these romance novels, and some of the archetypes that tend to show up, vampire, billionaire, werewolf, all these sorts of things. I don't understand it. Maybe you understand it. But would it be safe to assume then that women actually select for masculinity, for very highly masculine traits in their sexual partners? And so if we were to reduce masculinity in society, as we've done, and men have become a little bit softer, less testosterone, a little bit more beta as time is going on, then that's actually really bad for women. It's bad for society. It's bad for men. Men are less happy. Men have less purpose. Women have less to select from. Women are not reproducing as much with, the average man, and that this is basically bad for everyone. If men are becoming less masculine.
If men are becoming less masculine, have their options, have women started dating less?
Well, I'd say that actually what's happened is that women, because of their hypergamous dating nature, are starting to date. They're trying to date up. So in terms of socioeconomics, women tend to look for men who earn more than them and who are taller than them, who have more social status than them, just in general. Not every woman, obviously, but in general they do. So they're looking upwards. And as women tend to climb their career corporate ladder, as they're being educated more, they're getting paid more, etc., they tend to have a higher standard in what they're looking for with a man in terms of socioeconomics and social status. So it's actually reducing their dating pool. Like if you looked at it on a spectrum like this, women used to be down here in terms of their social status and their socioeconomic earnings and everything. And then now they're up here. And so that they're only looking at these guys, as opposed to before they might have looked at all these guys and thought that they were a suitable mate.
Okay.
So yes, they've got less dating options. And do you think that's bad for women to have that less dating options?
They don't have less dating options. I think the data that you're referring to and the narrative that is spread across social media, especially the manosphere, has this idea that every single woman is looking for this 1%er, which is not true.
I'm not saying 1%. I'm just saying, like, in general, it's
I think a
reduced.
lot of women are, but I see short men, not necessarily financially stable men in jail, men at various levels of the financial spectrum, tall, short, big. They all have partners. They're all either married. They can all be married. They're all able to successfully find relationships with women. So this idea that all of a sudden every single woman is looking for, you have to be rich, you have to be tall, that's a narrative that is heavily pushed in the manosphere to give this idea that we're all unrealistic and we're all just focused on this one type of man. And
Yeah, but the data doesn't
trying to
actually.
relate that. I guess you're
Yeah.
trying to relate that to how men have become less masculine. So now we're forced to go to this smaller dating pool.
But the thing is that the data doesn't actually bear that out,
men.
what you're saying, because the data would suggest that people are getting married less, that women are having children much later. They're having children in their 30s now. I think the average age in the Western world is around 30 or something like that. They're getting married less. They're pair bonding less. Women are much less satisfied with their dating options. If you look at the trends on dating apps, for example, for women, they tend to swipe on like 4% of guys or something like that. So the data actually does bear this out, that women are much less satisfied with their dating options and that people are dating a lot less. Divorce rates are really high, for example. So and like the fact that they're having children much later is indicative of this as well. So you can say that, people are getting married just fine and the guys are doing well and all these short, fat guys have girlfriends, but that is just not true. That's just not the reality of the modern world.
Have you looked at the average person around you when you go to the grocery store or the mall? Walk down the street. Have you seen what the average person, average couple, what they look like? Have you looked at your friend group? Have you looked at acquaintances of your friend? Have you seen what they look like?
Even if I did that, it wouldn't actually bear out anything, because that would just be an anecdotal experience that I've had. So even if I did go and walk around and have a look at everybody, that would not be an argument.
Okay, right. Well, okay. So you mentioned about how women's dating habits and only wanting to focus on, and how men have changed and women are looking for this particular type of men, or a disproportionate of women are trying to look for this type of men. You mentioned social media. Why do you not focus on social media as a problem and automatically equate to feminism as what is contributing to this problem?
I
Because
mentioned
you
social media in my opening
exactly, you
statement.
mentioned social
Yeah.
media. So social media is a problem. And I even mentioned it in my statement as well about technology and the role that has played. Nobody seems to look at that or focus on what effect that has actually had in society. Everything just seems to be, well, men are not getting the dating options that they did before because of feminism. Men have changed because of feminism. There are other factors to look at other than just this constant feminism or women blaming. That's why I bring up social media and technology.
You look, this is why I brought up the socks and the laundry and the helium shortage before, because this is essentially what you're doing here is you're saying, well, here's another external problem that's not a part of the debate tonight, and you're still blaming feminism. We can talk about social media, but only as insofar as it pertains to the actual prompt of the debate. So how does it affect men and how does it affect women? How is it sort of conducive to feminism, and how is it negatively affecting dating and relationships and all these sorts of things? But if you want to say, well, social media is a big problem, like I would agree with you. Social media is a big problem, but that's not actually within the scope of the debate, unless we want to say how it's affected men, how it's affected women. And I think that's more interesting because actually I think that it's had a very negative effect on dating, for example. I think that women having this globalized sexual sort of like access to all men all around the world and being able to like just post a few booty photos on Instagram and then getting 10,000 followers and having men oogling at them all the time is objectively worse than the way that it might have been 50, 60, 70 years ago, where people were more confined to their communities and to their immediate sort of immediate communities in terms of dating. Would you disagree with that?
I believe, yeah, it may be worse, but what is driving that? How does feminism become the root of that issue?
Well, I think that
Who is allowing these women to date at that level? Who is allowing women to be able to have this option that, oh, like someone's gonna fly me out and spend this amount of money on me? Who is giving
happy to
women this
answer it.
idea?
Yep.
Who's giving the women this idea that they
Yeah.
want to be this ultimate provider and protector? Who's giving that?
Happy to answer it. So feminism, like I said, within my definition there, I don't think you've actually given a definition of feminism, but within my definition, it's the dismantling of patriarchal structures and the promotion of egalitarianism, or in pursuit of egalitarianism. So the idea of feminism is that we had certain social fabrics beforehand. This was the nuclear family. This was the man being the head of the household, and a woman's role was more sort of like provision of the children. It's not to say that women can't work. Women have always worked in terms of like community work and social work and these sorts of things. But feminism is trying to liberate women from that oppression. The foundational intellectual origins of feminism, from even people like Friedrich Engels, for example, says that women can never be truly liberated until they are liberated from the family structure and from the structure of marriage and having children. So that is one of the foundational ideas of feminism. And then from there, you've got women sort of entering higher education at much higher levels. You've got women now pursuing careers over family. And then it sort of bleeds into social media as well, because women all want to be these girl bosses who are out on a boat in Dubai instead of just, having a family or something like that. And this is sort of a status symbol for women, if you will, these days. If you've got the nice handbag and if you're out on a boat in Monaco or Dubai or something, that's the status symbol for you. So, I mean, I think that you can definitely draw a pretty steady link between the ideas of feminism and liberation from family and not having kids and offsetting children and pursuing the career life and social media and the way that women interact with that these days.
Okay, do you realize that you just said that feminism wants to liberate women from this oppression? You just said that, right?
Yes.
You think that oppression is good for women?
It's called a steel man. So if I'm steel
No,
manning
no,
their
no.
case,
But
I'm
you,
saying
you
it.
just said that feminism liberates women. You are actually identifying the condition that women lived under as oppression, and you're trying to tell me that that's not a problem.
Do you know what a steel man is?
That's irrelevant because I just
Do you,
asked
do you know?
you.
I see
You're
it's
aware
not
that
irrelevant. It's definitely very
no,
relevant. Do you
no,
know
that's
what a
not no,
do you know
no.
what a steel man
It is
is?
irrelevant because I'm trying to tell you that
Moderator,
Well,
we're going to need to get an answer to this question.
Leslie, I just want to step in here. So I think what he was trying to get at with the Steelman thing is he's explaining it from how he sees your view of it and trying to give it the clearest argument. So from that perspective of if that's what they're fighting towards or for is the liberation from this idea, he's not necessarily saying he agrees with that idea or that it's happening or this or that. It's just he's trying to give your perspective so that he can then present his point against it.
okay,
And
good.
if you say no, I don't know what a
So
steel
then you
man is, that's
agree.
fine. I can explain it to you.
Okay, good. So then you agree then that it's probably a bad idea to be under a system of oppression, and that a movement
Okay.
that
I'm
would
gonna have to explain
be
it. I'm gonna have
created
to explain it.
to liberate me from that oppression would actually be solving a problem, correct?
Well, I
I'm gonna
also
have to
real
explain
quick
this better.
before he responds to that, I was gonna steer it a little earlier towards maybe trying to get on the same page exactly of what each of you think the problem is that either one, masculinity or feminism, is causing. And Jake started kind of naturally going there with declining birth rates and his point on relationship breakdown. Maybe Leslie, you could give a little bit more of your, I guess, entire perspective for in a short kind of, back to back point, what you think the problem is that masculinity is causing a little bit more specifically, so that since he just laid his points out a second ago, you could put yours on the table and that'll create a little bit better friction points to go off of.
Well, I think I did specifically outline what the different problems are. It's just that technically speaking, this topic never specified what the problem is. So when in the resolution that says masculinity is not the problem, feminism is a problem, I can interpret that. I can interpret a problem as anything,
Right.
which
That's
is
why I want to
why
narrow it
he's
down.
focused
I
on
defined
dating.
the problem in my opening
Focused
statement.
on you were just focusing on dating and relationships. I'm
Mm-mm,
looking at there
not
are
the case.
there are
He listed
problems
a
in
lot of
society that go beyond
things.
just that feminism is not just a problem. So I can identify well the issue of if you have an issue of so many million girls were aborted versus in favor of having boy children. And I tell you that there's my interpretations of masculinity have actually led to
Where did
are
that happen,
actually
by the way?
underlying behaviors of hold on a minute. That
If you're gonna make a bunch of different points, we have to
no,
go
hold on,
one
let
by
me
one. If you
finish.
think that that's a problem, we can discuss that problem. So
No. He
that's
asked
something
me,
that I
the
can
moderator
actually.
asked me to identify what the problems were that I say
Okay.
that feminism
All
is
right.
not a problem.
All right.
That's
Tell
what
me
I'm
all the
doing.
problems, then we'll get
Yeah,
into it.
and
Okay?
and just be
Tell me all
specific
your
to
problems.
feminism and not femininity. I think they're kind of getting somewhat intertangled in this.
Yeah.
Okay, I talked about how technology or advancements in technology have actually created a society where men don't have to be like the traditional men that they were before. No one's actually looked at that. Technology is now erasing what it means for a human to be a human, and therefore what it means for a man to be a man. You can't blame everything just because men are not able to be as masculine as before. Take a look at technology and the role that plays. Not just blame it on feminism. Okay, that's an
Okay.
issue. You look at the issues of the world, the global turmoil in the world, and the fact that countries have been run historically and still presently primarily by men. But you're still thinking that feminism is a problem for the problems that exist in these societies. I talked about discrimination of birth. I talked about the issues of the patriarchy and the role that women were expected to play as subordinates, as dependents, as financially dependent, and how that actually created a negative environment for them, and it was a negative experience for them. Now feminism created an opportunity for them to get out of that. You don't how was it not clear how feminism is not the problem, but there are other issues that contribute to problems in society, and also how society has interpreted masculinity that has contributed to the problems. How is that not clear?
Well, what is the problem, you might ask?
I asked you
Anyway,
what the problem was.
sorry, I got sidetracked there. So first problem that you brought up there, okay? Because you brought up a bunch of problems. I'm not going to bring up socks in the laundry again. I'm not going to derail the debate by bringing up the shortage of helium, the finite resource that we're just using at children's birthday parties anymore, but that would be pertinent here. But anyway, so let's go with children being aborted. You said that children were aborted, and female children were aborted, infanticide. What was the problem there?
No, that was more looking at the issue of discrimination at birth, where if it's in parts of the world there are more instances of girl children being abandoned. In the
Okay.
cases that I brought up, there's more issues of if people had to choose, they would rather choose to have a boy child.
Okay, sure. Where did this happen?
In countries like China, India.
India. Yep, China, India.
But I brought up
So,
the China one-child policy.
so do you think that this might be a problem with India and the fact that India has a dowry system where and that India has like a social hierarchy and this sort of like social caste system where families, if they have a male child, the male can go out and work and everything, and then the female child will actually cost the money?
Why can't the female child go out and work?
Because in it, like this, we are talking about is an Indian cultural practice that they
Okay.
had, where they would kill the female child or they would abandon the female child because the
Okay.
female child can't go out and work and earn the money. So therefore, the only real
Can.
way that they could use the female child would be if they were to get a dowry for the female child. But this can cost the family a bunch of money, whereas the male can go out and work and can go out and make the family a bunch of money.
Yeah, well, that is the thinking of a culture where that has been ingrained as a norm. But I asked you, why can't a female child, even thinking from the culture, from the perspective of an Indian, why is it not ingrained in that culture that a female can go out and work and earn money in the same way that her brother
Because
can?
when you are burning cow shit to keep you warm, and when you're living in absolute and utter squalor, these things actually become quite apparent. And do you actually know who stopped this, by the way? Do you know this practice has stopped? This was the British Christians who came over to India, and they banned the practice of not only infanticide and killing the children, the female children, they also banned the practice of sati. Do you know what sati is? This is where a man would die and he would be burned on his funeral pyre, and the woman would jump in and burn alive with the man so that she could follow him to the afterlife. So this is a practice that was actually stopped by Christian British Chads. So if you're going to say that India has cultural problems, my goodness, I am with you, Leslie. I am 100% with you. If you're going to say that the Chinese one-child policy was a big problem, where the Chinese instituted this policy because they thought that their birth rate was going to explode and that they were going to have too many people and finite resources, and then all of the females were being killed for the exact same reason here, is that they, if they have a male child, if they only can have one child, then that can actually further their bloodline. So then they'd kill the females because the females won't carry their last name. So if you're going to say there's problems with the one-child policy in India, and if you're going to say that it's fantastic that the Christians came over and put a stop to this, the Chads, the masculine Chads on their boats with their rifles, I would 100% agree with you.
Oh, so then I guess after these masculine Chads came, that there were absolutely no more issues, gender issues within Indian culture. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
When did I say that?
There are no gender. No, but you said, well, they had this problem before, but thank God for these British Christian Chads that came and put a stop to that. Are there still
Leslie,
of
if we're going to
gender
say that India has
are
problems,
pervasive in
you
Indian
don't have
culture?
to keep talking. We can go back and forth. It's not, you don't have to
Yeah,
like.
but you asked me
I'm
where
speaking.
I brought
Yeah,
I
but
brought an
you tend to
example
do
of
this thing where you
right,
repeat the
where does
question
it
four different
exist?
ways.
We could do timed
and-
responses if it has to, but I think you guys
Yeah,
have
but
the ability
okay.
to be reasonable here.
You asked me something.
Where does my example exist? And I
Hold on a
mentioned
second. You
for-
asked me,
for
did I
Asia
say
as an
that? And I'm
example.
going to say no, and I'm going to clarify what I said, okay? So, first of all, I didn't say that caused no social problems in India. There are many social problems in India. Leslie, trust me. If you want to talk about India, you're preaching to the choir here, okay? You're preaching to the choir. But yes, those specific cultural practices where women were killed at birth, for example, and where women had to jump on the funeral pyres of their husband, were stopped by the masculine British Chads, not by women, not by little pansies. They were stopped by these British Chads who came over and said, hey, you know those demonic pagan practices that you're doing where the women have to burn alive? We're going to stop that. And that was masculinity. That was masculine men who came in and allowed for that to be stopped. Western masculine men. This is the society that you love. Or do you prefer, like, where are you from? You look like you're like maybe Nigerian or something like that. What's your ethnic background? What is
West
it?
Indian. West Indian.
West Indian. Wow, I was completely wrong. Normally, I'm actually pretty good at
Actually, I do get Nigerian a lot, but I am
Yeah.
a West Indian heritage. I'm Canadian. So
Right. And so tell me a little bit about the cultural practices of West Indians. Is this quite like a patriarchal culture? I don't really know too much about them.
well, I think most cultures in the West are basically globally are patriarchal. But it always comes down to I think level of
Most
education.
cultures in what?
Most cultures in the world are patriarchal. So I don't know what you want me to explain about my background or.
Well, is it, it's a Christian area of the world, West Indies, right?
Catholic, Christian, Anglican.
Right. So pretty patriarchal sort of culture. I mean, a lot of these cultures around the world, like the West Indies is actually a really good example of this. Like before colonization and before the Western Christians came over and colonized these places and brought Christianity and brought the value set of Christianity, a lot of these places were just absolutely engulfed in demonic pagan practices where it was a lot worse for the women actually, and then the Christians came over and sorted that out. I don't know exactly the case, but I would hazard to guess that if we looked into the history of the West Indies, then there would be a bunch of masculine Christian Chads who came and put the pagans to the sword, I would assume.
I don't think that colonization is that's probably the last example that you want to bring to bring forth an argument about something that probably helps society in the West Indies and definitely not in India. Because if you're going to tell me about how Christian Chad's kingdom helped save India, they're the root of a lot of the social unrest that is existing in India today, and certainly in the West Indies.
Such as what? What unrest?
West Indies were all British. The West Indies were all British colonies, and they've
Right.
all been a victim of colonization. So I
Based.
think that to bring colonization as some big deal and all that kind of helps save that's probably not the best example.
All
for
right, you
that.
said that already. Tell me about India. What are the social problems here? So obviously, like you would have preferred to keep India the way it was, pagan,
I didn't say that.
sati, children being killed at birth. That's what you.
I didn't
No,
say that.
you said you didn't like.
Look at modern day
colonization.
India. Are
You
you
said you
aware
didn't
of
like
the
it.
violence against women?
Yeah, but you
Modern
said
day, which is largely related to the fact that it is a largely patriarchal society where women don't have as much position in society. Because you seem to think that when these Christians came in and then it put an end to the sati practice, all of a sudden everyone in India was free to flourish, and there were no issues. Are you aware of the social problems that exist in India today that are still
Do you have
very
any
much
idea why these social
gender,
problems
that
exist?
are still relative to gender?
Oh,
And
you don't need to. You don't need to.
I should
You can
ask
ask the
you.
question because you ask the question and then you'll prattle on for another minute. Just ask the question and then land the plane. It's like you
Okay,
don't
well,
need to
then
be
answer
a strong,
then.
independent
Answer
woman
that.
who's not going to be talked over. Just ask the
Okay,
question and I'll
answer
answer the
the
question.
question then.
Okay, cool. Do you know why they have such a hierarchical system in India?
I know of the caste system.
The caste system, exactly right. So this is not because of British colonization. This is because they have a caste system where they think that some people at the bottom of the caste are basically like animals. And then the people at the top of the caste, the Brahmins up there in India, are the hierarchy of society. So they have a naturally hierarchical society. And when the British came over to India, they introduced them to all sorts of things. They got rid of those old pagan practices. They introduced common law. They introduced a parliamentary system. There was the British colonization of India was an unbelievably positive thing for the country. Even tea, even cricket. They got rid of the pagan. I mean, unless you would say that you would like them to keep killing children out of the womb and keep having women jump on the funeral pyres.
The closest in proximity there to white skin is a better position for them for society. But to be honest, this is not.
Well, technically, yeah.
This is not the topic of this debate. So if you want to discuss colonization and the effects of that, we can do that on another day, but not today. So we're focusing on why feminism is not the problem. And if there was a massive feminist movement in countries that suffer gender inequality in countries like India, it it would speak much more to some more positive changes within Indian culture. So that's a reason why that's another reason why feminism is not the problem, but more so interpretation of masculinity, because interpretations of masculinity in our culture have presented this idea that no, if I have a girl children, she can't grow up to work. I can only rely on the boy children. These are examples of patriarchal, destructive ideas about gender constraints that have been ingrained in society that keep this backward thinking existing. So
All right.
again,
So you think that feminism is a good thing. You think that feminism is not a problem.
exactly.
Okay, cool. Let's go here then. We'll go down this more sort of simple route, I guess. Outline to me. So do you think that there are problems with feminism or no problems with feminism?
There may be some. I mean, nothing is perfect, so there could be some problems with feminism, but overall, it's not
Right.
the big problem, big major problem.
And your definition of feminism was what?
I followed my definition of feminism is kind of similar to yours.
Okay.
Is belief that it's a belief that everyone, regardless of gender, should have equal rights and opportunities.
Everybody, regardless
do you
of
see a
gender,
problem
should
with
have
that?
should have equal rights and opportunities.
Yeah, do you see a problem with that?
Well, I don't think that everybody is entitled to equal rights. I don't think that everybody in the world should be entitled to equal rights. I don't even
Okay.
think that rights really exist, if I'm totally honest, but that's a meta debate. So when you say rights, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like, civil rights, voting rights, all these sorts of things?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Well, no, I don't agree with that.
Okay. So that's a
Yeah.
problem.
And I don't think that anybody really really agrees with that. I think that feminism, as far as I can see, is actually a movement to basically destroy patriarchal social structures, or social structures in general, particularly ones that would be patriarchal, for example, like the family, the man being the head of the household and a woman being a wife. It restructures the way in which women view even their ontology, like their actual nature and their essence, and they don't see themselves as essentially people who can give birth and who can be wives and mothers and to put their energy and their sort of life's mission and purpose into that. Rather, they see themselves as like economic units and vessels to be used for the GDP of the nation and to have freedom and independence over everything. So that's sort of more how I would categorize feminism. Would you disagree?
Okay, no, I agree. That's a good thing.
Right. So this is obviously, like, it goes without saying that this is going to mean that women have less children, because if women are focused more on career and less on family, then they're going to have less children. And we've seen the outcomes of that, like, pretty clearly, that the birth rates are dropping all around the Western world. It's pretty much coincided with the feminist movement.
Okay. I'm not gonna readily agree with that, because I know there's other ways to approach that, but if that's the vein you want to go into, I can see why you make the association between that and the feminist movement.
Yeah. There are other things as well, obviously. Like, there are other things like urbanization, modernization, technology, all these sorts of things. They contribute to, like, declining birth rates. But in terms of the social structure and the fabric of society, feminism and the ideology of the modern woman is something that really sort of tears at those fabrics. So you would also agree that the declining birth rates mathematically will mean that our civilizations will be extinct eventually?
Sure.
Okay. And do you think that's a problem?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been a good debate. I appreciate everybody coming out for this one.
I'm not sure why that's directly related to feminism. I mean, you talked about how why women are not getting pregnant, or why they're not maybe getting married. Well, why is that? Could it be that maybe the models for marriage that existed before, they don't want to be part of that anymore? Could it be that maybe marriages before, men did not necessarily treat women properly within marriages? Could it be that because women have been historically the ones who are expected to have primarily responsibility raising a man's child, and they don't necessarily expect to have that burden anymore? Could it be that maybe women that they do want to, that there's nothing wrong with them pursuing careers, maybe the men should be staying at home and living with the children, because you could still have a two-parent household, but why can't the woman pursue her career
All right. So
ambition
could it
and the
be?
man
Could it
stay
be?
home? What's the difference?
Could it be? What do you
Yeah.
think, though? Because you're just asking me, could it be? Could it
Well,
be? So
we've never been able to really live in a society where it wasn't male dominated, or we didn't have to see everything automatically from the male perspective. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe if there's a different way, you would
now
see
we live
it
in a more
differently.
gynocentric, a more femcentric society where women are elevated in terms of socioeconomics and career and power and everything, and the birth rates are going down. Women have access to birth control, for example. They're able to offset having children in pursuit of a career, and the birth rates are going down. So I wouldn't say that any of those reasons, like, I don't think that there's any evidence that any of those reasons that you suggested are the reason for birth rate collapse, which you said is a big problem.
Well, it also could be that I think most women, so there's a lot more women than other women and other men may want to admit that they just don't want children. Before, when you see, the thing that feminism gave was a choice. If women were living under a much more oppressed and heavily male dominated world, their choices were less. But once you give people a choice, they choose
When did
what
they
they
not have a choice?
but hold on, but they choose what they want to do.
Yeah, but
Well,
when did
were
when did they not have a choice? Because you said before they
well
didn't have a choice.
they
When were they
had
forced?
they had less of an opportunity to exercise their choices, and that's a fact.
But they had a choice though. Like if they didn't want to have children, they could not have children before.
And be yeah,
Right. So then
but
feminist
not
propaganda,
not
feminist
no, it's
conditioning
not
over a
no,
long
it's
period of
patriarchal
time.
propaganda. It's patriarchal propaganda that told women that if you want to be worthy, considered worthy women, you have to be married and you have to be housewives and you have to have children. A lot of women didn't want that
And
lifestyle. They
society was
were
absolutely
forced
humming.
to.
And so now the other conditioning is happening, the feminist conditioning that tells women that actually if you're a mother and if you're just a mother, then this is a bad thing, and that you need to be a mother and a career woman and try and do both. But first and foremost, you need to be a career woman. This has coincided with the declining birth rates. When it was a more patriarchal structure and women were based, and women will also always be based, will base their sort of societal value on their husband, their partner, and their children. Like that will always be the case. And this is why actually feminism is just essentially chasing its tail. It's always going to be chasing its tail because you have a bunch of very sort of like masculinely temperamented women who will say, well, this is what you really have to do. You have to go and chase a career and you have to be equal to men, but they can never be equal to men. That's never going to happen. So it's actually a terrible thing to bestow upon women, to tell them that they have to be more like men because they'll never be
How's
like
that
men. They're
terrible?
women. It is a terrible thing to bestow on women. Like like I said before, they're never going to be like men. They're always going to be women. And even if when women meet each other, what's the first thing they ask each other? Do you have a man? What's the first thing that men ask each other? What do you do for work? This is just what we do. Women are more just they care about that sort of stuff more. And then if you try and program them out of their natural
Where are
biology,
you
it's
getting
never
that
going to
data from,
work.
though? Where are you
Sorry?
getting that data from? Where are you getting
What
that
data?
data from?
What data?
That the first thing that we ask is, do you have a man? Like, where are you getting that data from?
it's a rhetorical flourish. I'm using it as rhetoric. Would you say that is the first
So
thing that
you're being
you
very
ask all of your
specific about it.
girlfriends? What do you do for work? You don't ask them about their relationship circumstances?
Unless it comes
I've
up, but
never
we
seen a
don't,
study on it.
whatever. Good. So then there's no point in bringing it up as a specific point to make. Then
I'm not an
this is just your
empiricist. I don't
opinion.
just do things. I don't just do things purely based upon
So then,
studies.
okay, so
So
this is just your opinion then.
well, look, the audience can listen to this and they can decide whether women generally tend to talk about their careers more with each other or women generally tend to talk about family and what the first things that women speak to each other about. There's no point in us going into it because there's not really any data on it. You have your opinion, I have mine. I think you're saying that I'm wrong about that women won't ask each
So
other about their partners and they won't
so
talk
so
about
so
boys.
so so so, so men don't talk about women.
Yeah, it's not the first thing that we really talk about. We don't go into the detail.
Right.
Women will go into they'll sit there over their coffee and over their brunch and they will go into excruciating
Okay, that's
detail
true.
about the men that they're dating and everything. Men, it's like maybe a
Right.
passing comment. We just don't really talk about it that much. We generally tend to talk about career and these sorts of things. It'd be kind of weird if a guy was talking to me heaps about women and about his girlfriend
Okay.
and stuff. I'd find that a bit strange.
Okay. So what does that prove?
It proves that women tend to care more about these sorts of things and is actually rooted in their biology to care more about these sorts of things, whereas men are much more
No,
sort of like
maybe
mission
it just
driven.
proves
Men
that.
have always been more mission driven. Women have always been more family oriented, and that's actually like a beautiful thing. That's a perfect like symbiosis, if you will, there between men and
No,
women. If women are much
or
more
can it
family
be?
oriented and men are much more mission oriented, men are much more providing oriented, women are much more nurturing oriented. That really works very well. And if that's a microcosm of what society could look like, what society used to look like. Society doesn't look like that anymore. Everything's fractured, everything's broken, and now people aren't dating, people aren't pair bonding, people aren't having children. We're seeing that reflected in the data in terms of the birth rates, which you admitted before is a big problem. But you have no counter to my claim here that feminism is a large part of this problem.
I think I've counted enough. But back to what you were saying about the level of conversation as a proof of what women care about. Maybe that's just because men have been conditioned to not talk about certain things with their friends versus where women have been given more free reign to talk about things that are connected to their emotions. So that doesn't mean that women care more about relationships than men. That's actually an inaccurate statement. It's just
Look,
what
if
we
you want
are
to go into data about
talk
this,
about.
we could
And the
look it
next
up right
thing is,
now if you wanted to go into the more exhaustive data about this sort of stuff. But men are
yeah, but
much more
I'm
interested in
not
things.
disagreeing with you.
I'm going to make,
I'm
let me
just
just
telling
make
you
the
that.
point first before you
No,
cut me off.
yeah, but you were talking before,
Women are
so
much more
I'm
interested in
my point.
women. I'm making the point. You cut me off.
We got about 3 minutes left before we go into the
No,
closing.
my
So
point is that you're using that as a way to say that, well, women care more about relationships than men. It's not. What about the fact that women are more socialized to talk about certain topics with their friends versus men who may consider it
Look,
Jake, would
feminine to
you?
talk about
I can
certain
demonstrate
topics?
this for you. I can demonstrate this for you. Women are much more interested in people and in relationships, and men are much more interested in things, right? So all of the psychological data of the different like psychological analyses that have been done over mass scale between men and women show this, and also you can see it in the careers that they go into. Women will go into nursing, they'll go into school teaching and all these sorts of things, all of these pink jobs, and men will go into the trades and they'll go into all of these things where they're more interested in things, right? So women are just naturally more interested in people, and basically any data that we're going to go through, if we wanted to go through the data, would reflect that.
That's a pretty general statement to make, because if men are
It's
not
generally
interested in
true. That's
people,
the thing.
they
It's
wouldn't
true.
be. Are they not the ones that are primarily running companies that employ thousands of people? You have to be able to work with people and interact with them to be able to be successful at your job. So I don't
Yeah, no,
understand. Women
I
are more
would.
interested in people and men with things. Like what things are you talking about?
So men are more interested in like mechanics, for example, like in the engine of a car, for example. This is why men dominate the trades. They're very interested in things, the way that things works, the mechanisms of things. That's why men are largely engineers and men largely in the trades and these sorts of things. And women are interested in caring and in nurturing roles like schools, for example, like being a primary school teacher, like being a nurse, like being a social worker, these sorts of things. Women dominate those. And actually, all of the Scandinavian countries, I've heard you reference them before, actually, where they give the most choice, right? Women have the most choice in these countries to go into whatever they want to go into. Women are absolutely dominating the pink jobs in those sorts of countries. So where they have the
Is this
most
due
choice,
to
they
nurture or
choose
nature?
people more. They choose nurturing more.
Okay, is this due to nurture or nature?
This is their nature. There's no evidence that this is nurture.
Okay, so why are there male nurses, and why are there women who are mechanics, and why are there women who are engineers, and why are there women who are
Yeah, okay,
also
I get the
coming up
point.
in
There's going to be outliers.
dominated roles?
Yeah,
Pardon
there's going to
me?
be outliers, but outliers don't prove the rule. The exception doesn't prove the rule. The rule proves the rule. And even if you're talking about nurture, it would actually suggest the total opposite of what you're suggesting here. So nurture, if you're trying to create the societal conditions for people to go into X, that's what they did in the Scandinavian countries. They tried to create the societal conditions where women had as much freedom as they possibly could to choose any career that they wanted to go into, and women generally tend to go into the pink roles in these countries. So
Okay.
both
Do you know
nature
how
and
long
nurture
women
make
have
my
been
argument.
socialized? Do you know how long
Sorry?
women have been socialized? I mean, nothing wrong with either direction, but do you know how long women have been socialized to only be caring, to be seen as caring and be seen as nurturing? Like, it's funny how you say, well, women are caring and nurturing, so are men. They may show it in different ways, but it's funny that you don't associate those characteristics with men, but you automatically just assume that only women can be that.
Well,
So
I actually do think that
do you
men are
know
better
how
than
long?
women
Do you know
at pretty much everything.
because of how long that women have been socialized And it doesn't even matter how liberal societies become, or how closer to equality societies become. Women have always been socialized to be to
You're making the
portray
same
certain
point 4
characteristics.
times now. I understood
Oh,
after
hold
the
on.
first time
Okay,
that you said it.
but as long as you understand that it is going to take centuries to before we can have a society where men are seen just as nurturing and caring and take up the
That's all well
same
and good and
skills as
everything,
each
but
other.
there's just no evidence of that. Like
Yeah, but
I
not
pointed I
yet.
pointed out to
Not
you
yet. We're
before. I
getting there,
pointed
which
out
is
to you
why.
before, Leslie, please.
Yeah.
I pointed out to you before that feminism made this prediction that women, as soon as the patriarchal structures were dismantled and as soon as they had more liberation, more freedom, this idea that they would go for these domineering men, these dominant masculine high social status men, would all disappear. They were absolutely and utterly wrong about that. And I would say that there's a good chance, I can't prove this, but there's a good chance that that's actually been accentuated as men have had less of that domineering like role in society. As men have less authority in society, women are more attracted to those sorts of guys because it's more scarce nowadays. So if you
I'm
wanted
actually
to
never
like
heard that.
make the case here that over a period of time, once women are socialized more, they're going to become the CEOs and they're going to start playing in the NBA and they're going to start wanting, they're going to start being attracted to different guys. There's just no evidence of that. Like, as far as I can see, women are still attracted to the Chad vampire goblins who, and women want to be the little damsel in distress that is ravaged by the Chad vampire. As far as I can see, that is what the data bears out. And when
Okay,
we
so
look at these countries, the women are still choosing these nurture roles. So you can sit here and say, well, it's going to take 500 years, but there's just no evidence of this switching.
Real quick,
I've actually never.
Leslie, before you get into it, I just want to say this will be your last statement. Jake will give a response, and then you'll begin your closing statements here before we get into the Q&A.
Yeah, I've actually never heard of any kind of feminism that said that all of a sudden women would be attracted to a less masculine male if feminism got its way. I've never heard that before, so you would have to show me the data on that. Yeah, so that's just my point to that. I'm not sure where you got that from.
Yeah, I mean, feminism is the idea of feminism, Leslie, is that you want to eliminate the distinctions between men and women. You want them to be closer together. Okay, you want men to
We
be
already are.
you know you want women. Yes, I know, but women are still attracted to the vampire archetype, Leslie. That's what I'm saying. So you want to eliminate those distinctions, eliminate those barriers, and free women from this oppression. And once they're liberated, they will basically be the CEOs, and they'll be in the NBA, and they'll be doing all these sorts of things. And this has not happened. Women are still attracted to this sort of high socioeconomic man, the vampire archetype that we were talking about before. But there are just less of them in supply. But anyway, yeah, I guess we can get into to closing statements.
Yeah, all right. So you got 2 to 4 minutes to do a closing, Leslie, and then we'll get it back over to Jake, and then we'll go into the Q&A.
Okay. Well, I'd like to point out that all the working women that are could be high achievers, whether CEOs, positions of authority within the companies that they work with, most of these women are married with children. So this idea that they're not going to be able, they're not able to find the mates that they attract now that feminism is kind of getting its way, is this is why I'm not understanding where you're getting this idea that all of a sudden these potential mates are disappearing. The reason why feminism is not the problem is because feminism has really only sought to achieve equality, regardless of gender. And I don't understand why it would be a problem for me to say that I am entitled to the same rights and dignity and opportunity as my male counterpart. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why that would be a problem. It is interesting to me that my colleague sees that as a problem, that it's a problem for women to want to be career oriented. It's a problem for women to want to pursue it's a problem for women to want to pursue positions outside of the home, and that we should be focused on being wives. When it's funny when my colleague mentions that, when one of the items that I mentioned that is a problem is concepts of marriage. I think that my colleague and my and his followers would love for us to return back to a day when women were just property of men, when they had no rights within the marriage, outside of the marriage, when they went from being owned from their father to owned from their husband. And this is part of the English law, the old English law of coverture. All of these all of this and Also, what I mentioned about how elements of the patriarchy where where and poor interpretations and negative interpretations of masculinity have led to negative behaviors of men and also negative ideas of how men and women how women should be treated and how women should be in the first place. Feminism is not the problem that my colleague is wants to present it to be. I think we need to look more on how masculinity has been skewered, how that's at the basis of a lot of society's problems. And again, think of the fact that it is these negative interpretations of masculinity that is the reason why feminism exists in the first place. And if everything was so perfect before, which is the time that Jake and his followers would love to return to, if everything was so perfect and non-problematic before, we would not have created a movement that saw as a problem to get us to the point where we are today, where women just don't want to be part of that system anymore. So yeah, feminism is not the problem that Jake and his followers would love to think it is.
All right,
Okay.
that's 3 minutes there. You got 2 to 4 on the clock here, Jake. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think that we have to go into this in such excruciating detail. I think the audience will be able to know pretty clearly what just happened. So we got into the debate, and we have to obviously look at the prompt here. It's masculinity is not the problem, feminism is. Okay. So we have to define masculinity, we have to define feminism, and then we have to define the problem. I never really got the problem from Leslie, by the way, but we did get some sort of like a nebulous definition of masculinity and femininity. But then she agreed that masculinity is inherently a good thing, but some people will obscure the good thing. It's like if I listen to, for example, Hit the Road Jack and Don't You Come Back No More, if I listen to that song, right, the song is good. It's a good song. If then I see somebody on the piano butchering it, acting like they're blind, hit the road, Jack. I'm not going to say that Hit the Road Jack is a bad problem. Okay. I'm going to say Hit the Road Jack is a great song, but this person butchered Hit the Road Jack, and that's that person's problem. Okay. Phenomenal song, by the way. Anyway, so she agrees that masculinity is good, essentially conceded that whole portion of the debate, never really got to the problem. And then in terms of feminism, she agreed that the likely outcome of feminism is that we go extinct and that that is a big problem. So she looks at all the fruits of it and says that it's a big problem, but then doesn't say that the actual thing itself is the problem here. So anyway, I don't really think that we really need to go into too much more detail here. It's pretty pretty self-evident what just happened, but happy to get into the questions.
All right. Appreciate that. I appreciate both you guys for coming out tonight, stepping into the arena. As Teddy Roosevelt always says, that's where the respect lies, is the person stepping in, not the critic. So before we get into the super chat Q&A, you guys get your questions right now. We got some good ones. I just want to say today's debate was sponsored by Farmeasy Bank. You can get 20% off by clicking or scanning the QR code here on the screen. They are sponsoring a few of the online debates these past couple weeks. And they basically do dropship delivery of all sorts of different prescription medications straight to your door. You don't got to go to the store, pick them up, whatever you might need. They do also sell ivermectin, fenbendazole, Fildina, and weight loss products, all sorts of other stuff. 20% off clicking on the QR code there. James swears by it. He gets whatever he needs from them if he needs one of those things. So thank you, Farmeasy Bank. Hit that QR code there. And DebateCon 9 coming up in Orlando. So get your tickets. And if you can't make it, subscribe at the Final Word tier membership, and you will be able to stream it live as it happens. So let's get into those super chats now. And we'll hit it with a big one that we got from an OG here, Mr. Red Fox.
Red Fox, the legend.
Big W. He sends $100 and he says, ideologies that deny measurable average differences in human nature tend to produce policies with poorer outcomes for both sexes. How would a policy focused on equality, not equal outcomes, and avoid victimhood narratives?
So, Jimmy, I'll summarize it because Red Fox is is a man of great rhetorical capability. So great linguistic capability as well. So basically what he's saying here is that if the ideology itself denies the fundamentals of human nature and it tries to orient itself towards something that is not in accordance with human nature, or that doesn't correspond with our essence, then it's ultimately bound to fail. So how would you create an ideology and create equal outcomes when it doesn't correspond with our nature?
Well, do you want me to respond to that, or are you going to
Yeah.
respond to that first?
You guys both can respond to it. It does seem like that is aimed more towards you, Leslie. So whenever there's a super
Okay.
chat aimed at one debater, they'll answer first, and then we'll let the other person give their comment.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
it won't.
human
It won't.
nature.
Yeah, it won't create outcomes. But anyway, you go for it, Leslie.
Well, I mean, if you look at the difference between the countries where there have been feminist movements and obvious where feminism has played a role in how both genders exist amongst each other versus countries that don't. You see there's a difference between like even just simple metrics of happiness. The position of women in society, women's lack of having zero presence in society or zero presence in marriage, how that is negatively like the physical, social, emotional abuse that these women that are considered par for the course of women existing in these societies where feminism is
This is
not
not
necessarily
true.
present versus here. That's an example of if you want to measure success. Now he talks about human nature. Men and women basically have essentially the same human nature, and I think we have been so focused, and especially the patriarchy has been so focused on trying to um, focus on what makes women different from men that we don't realize that men and women are actually far more similar than we are different. And I think feminism is a movement that sheds light on the fact that we all have the same emotion. There's really nothing that a man can do that a woman cannot. We all have the same, we're all privy to the same thoughts and ambitions. Just like I said before, traits are not actually gendered. It's just that traits somehow become associated with men, certain traits become associated with women. But at the end of the day, we all have the same human nature because we're all humans first. So feminism wants you to focus
Leslie,
on women
we
as
got
human.
Yeah, we do
Patriarchy
we
is
do
more
gotta
about-
put
the plane must eventually be landed. So what you said before, Leslie, about you said something about men and women in these different countries reporting higher happiness and stuff. Like, repeat that claim for me.
No, it's just like if you look at countries where maybe like Nordic countries where that have reported higher instances of happiness versus other countries where maybe in Middle East or sub-Saharan Africa or some countries like that where machismo is much part of these cultures. There's a difference between there's an economic impact. There is just overall mental health, a difference between those
I gotcha. Do you think
individuals.
that
Yes,
do you think that perhaps
it is.
you're drawing a causation there that isn't quite the case? So if I look at Nordic countries, for example, Nordic countries are some of the most wealthy and homogenous societies in the entire world. And then you're comparing them to places in the Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa. Do you think that maybe war and famine and displacement and hunger and lack of access to clean drinking water and no socioeconomic opportunities might be a better correlation there or might be a better causation there than machismo?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a factor. But do you think it's a coincidence that these countries that are more economically sound that they are the societies where there's more liberal and feminism has been present? You don't think that's a coincidence?
You're saying that feminism caused the
No,
economic
no, I'm
prosperity
saying
of these
that
places?
I'm saying that in these countries that you identified as being more economically sound, these are the wealthier countries. More the concept of equality exists more in these countries versus the same ones that you said that are war torn and poverty stricken, etc. You don't think that's a coincidence?
No, I mean, these countries are the most homogenous society. Like if you look at Finland Norway, Denmark, and these sorts of countries, up until recently, it's going down, by the way, but these countries are the most homogenous countries in the entire world, and they're the most rich as well. Like Finland, Norway, these places, they literally have more money than they know what to do with, and they have like just incredible amounts of prosperity and resources. Somehow they're managing to fuck it up, but the idea here that this is to do with feminism and that the correlation between why they report higher happiness as compared to somebody in Namibia is because of less masculine attitudes, is there is no way to draw that causation.
Well, then there's no way to draw what you're saying as well. But I'm saying that I don't think it is a coincidence that these countries that are considered the most wealthiest in the world are also the ones where society is more liberal. And you can't tell me like that you don't notice that the countries that are not more liberal, where there's more backward thinking, or the societies where women are at the bottom of the hierarchy, social hierarchy.
Okay, well then by that logic, you can't tell me that these countries that report the highest happiness, it's not just because they're the most white.
Say that again. It is because what?
They're the most white.
What does that have to do with anything?
What does liberalism have to do with anything?
I'm asking you, do you not see, are you trying to tell me that it is that is not a coincidence that the countries that are seen as the most wealthiest nations are the ones where equality has been a factor in that society versus the other ones? And now you're bringing
I'm using literally the exact same logic as you, and I'm saying, do you not see that it's just because they're the most white? So
Okay.
you're using a factor, you're using a variable, I'm using a variable, and we're both saying, do you not see that this could be the reason? And I'm saying white, you're saying liberal.
Okay, so if these are more white run nations, what's your point? If you are saying that there's a correlation between wealthy nations that and they're all white run, then why can't you see a correlation between these wealthy nations that are also have equality present in them? And to the question that was asked, it was like, how do you can there be a system where where you want to kind of go against human nature and have a positive outcome? But my response to that was men and women actually have the same human nature because we're all humans. And instead of feminism actually supports
Tell
that.
them that it's human nature.
Yeah. So is that an agreement, or since you're saying to it?
Yeah, there are a lot of different factors. I think that, homogeneity is a big factor. I think that economics is a big factor. I think that Christian lineage is a big factor. Not being war-torn, not being in a war-torn area is a big factor as to why people are happy, and that it's not necessarily the fact that these people are less machismo. I think that that's an irrelevant factor. But
all right, yeah, that's a good
The
amount
fact that
of.
these countries have women also working in the workforce also has something to do with it. But
All right, Jake, I'll give you a chance if you wanted to respond to that last one, but we do have to move it on. I gave that about a good 6-7 minutes because that gentleman did knock it out for the first one.
Yep. They're becoming more liberal. They're importing masses of people from the third world. Birth rates are going down the toilet. These places used to be the happiest and best and most prosperous societies in the world because they had a high trust, homogenous society. But now Sweden became the rape capital of Europe for a little while there, and a lot of them are getting destroyed. So liberalism, not the one. But anyway, happy to carry on.
That's another debate, though, because we're not here to debate liberalism.
Fair enough. All right. One more from Red Fox for 20. Thank you, sir. He says, if you're focused on quality and one sex has the unique ability to create life, then shouldn't women prioritize that unique capability over a career or material wealth? Thank you, Red Fox. Leslie, do you think that they should prioritize that unique ability if we're focused on quality?
Yeah, who said they haven't? Just because women are not having 5 and 6 children and staying at home, that doesn't mean that they don't prioritize having children. I think most women, again, if you look around you, most women past a certain age have children. Most women past a certain age are either in an established relationship or married. So I don't see the claim in that. Just because you're not barefoot and pregnant, or because you're not having 5, 6, and 12 children like yesteryear, that doesn't mean you're not prioritizing
Well, it's just
as
saying
much.
over a career or material wealth. So I don't necessarily think it has to be what you were saying. Just like it does seem like career and material wealth is his main claim that women specifically, are focused on more than that unique ability. So shouldn't they focus more on the unique ability as his main argument?
I think he'd have to prove that women don't care about those things. Or actually, no, I shouldn't say that because I understand
Birth
what
rates,
I
birth
understand what
rates
he
going down.
but I think it's important to recognize that women can prioritize having a family and having kids, but not that doesn't mean that they should have to eschew their goals for having a career.
Okay.
Happy to
It
move on.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it's not prioritized.
Sure. Okay, so those are the two from Red Fox. I just wanted to get those first since he definitely got it in early too. So we'll hit a couple of these tens real quick. Actually, religious said for $10, women own about 40% of all businesses in the U.S., but only account for about 3% of all revenue. What good is having all these women working if they can't even make a dollar?
They do make $1. Maybe not as much as
A
they do.
commenter of that one said 6%, but that's a couple
Technically,
more.
they do. They have made $1. That is true. But
I know,
the
Mila,
problem
what's
is here, and the thing that the chatter is highlighting is that this whole girl boss economy of women who are CEOs and founders is basically being held up and supported by male ingenuity. So the whole entire economy is being supported by the profits of male-run businesses, and to a much lesser extent, female-run businesses.
okay, so women are working and they're in different positions of authority, and some of them are running businesses or not because they're not making as much. Maybe not if they're not contributing as much economically. Who cares? If the complaint was that women don't contribute to society and we're the ones who we're the ones who build society, but then when you have women contributing, wanting to participate in society in the same way, then you come back with, well, it's not as much as men. Like who cares? They're in the workforce.
Yeah,
They
it's
have a
basically a
choice for doing the
participation
work.
award that we've got going on here. 44% of companies and then 3% or 6% of the output means that they are being literally supported and held up by the ingenuity of men. And without these male-run businesses, like if you just got rid of all of those female-run companies tomorrow, a lot of them are going to be like skincare brands and all of this bullshit. Like it would have literally zero effect, and then we could send them back to the kitchen, back to the household, have children, and do something that's actually productive rather than having your little fluffy notepad. That's essentially the crux of the argument there.
No, that's a pretty general bias statement. Women, I mean, if you only look at everything that women do in the demeaning way, that's why you can't see what women do as having any kind of positive effect in society. But women are working; they are contributing in more than just frivolous jobs that you think. And it doesn't matter if there's 2 million or 200,000 or 200 million; they're still contributing. So who cares? It's not a numbers game. You complained when you didn't participate in society. Now that we are, now you're complaining about the numbers. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so we want it to go back. We were complaining that you guys are participating too much.
Well, you
Okay? We
complained
hear
that,
from
oh
you guys
well,
too much, and
no, you
now
complained that
that's
we
very
didn't
consistent.
participate in society. We
No,
didn't build
no one
roads.
ever
We're the ones
complained
that are
about that.
doing.
You
We're the
guys were
ones that
doing
are
just
doing well.
fine,
No,
having children and
we're the ones that.
oh,
Oh,
thank God,
she froze.
thank God.
I don't.
Going out of fashion.
Oh, there she is. All right.
Most of history, parents have wanted sons, as they traditionally inherited the family's name and its wealth.
Oh, we got
Bit of
YouTube.
In
research.
recent years, the spies for boys has dramatically decreased in developing countries.
Sorry, that was my. I think I had
Don't give away your sources like that, Leslie.
I think my video played automatically. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry.
No worries. That's probably a good time to go to the next question from actually religious for another 10. They said, Leslie, the NCS report statistics indicate when women are in charge of people weaker than themselves, abuse rates skyrocket in comparison to men. This indicates we have a huge problem with toxic feminism.
If that's the data, I agree.
Yeah, I think that just a slight caveat or a slight change to that statement would be that it would kind of apply equally to what you were saying about masculinity before. If we can see that the data bears out that women are much more likely to do these sorts of abusive things when they have any sort of power, then that would be something that you could attribute to femininity if you wanted to be bad faith about it. But that's not something that we would attribute to femininity. It's bad things that females do more than men. So
And of course,
that's,
men definitely don't have those characteristics when in power, correct? Men
I'm not
definitely
sure if you
don't
understood the
use their
logic
power.
of what I was just saying, or
No, you're saying that when women abuse their power, it's an example of toxic femininity or whatever,
Or they're saying
which is the
when
same.
it was just commenting on a NCS report statistic that indicated that women in charge of people weaker than themselves tend to abuse, indicated by the abuse rates skyrocketing in comparison to men. So you could probably look up the NCS report and then type in women abuse power dynamic or something. I'm not sure exactly
yeah, no
what it
one
would be
basically,
called.
yeah, no one said
Yeah,
that
so that's a bad
men
thing.
don't
So
do bad things, but I'm just saying that that is something that if you wanted to be bad faith, you could attribute to femininity, but I wouldn't. I'm just saying in terms of the definitions, like you were saying before, that masculinity encompasses all of these bad things, but then you said that masculinity was inherently a good thing. So I think it's just good to make the distinction, to separate those things from femininity, from masculinity, rather
yeah, but
than
you said
things that
femininity
happen,
was.
things that men do more or things that women do more, that
Yeah,
bad people
you said
do.
that femininity is more corresponds with nurture and caring. The characteristics that are present in people who abuse um people that are weaker than them are actually correspond more with masculine characteristics, which is why I
I think we
said at
can
the
move. I think we
beginning
can move
traits
on.
are not
I've tried to
gendered, which is
explain
why
it
I
a
said
few
traits are
times
not
now.
gendered. But
Okay.
the patriarchy has focused on men have these characteristics, women have to have these characteristics,
Okay.
but at the end of the day, we're all human,
Yeah.
or more similar than we are different.
Appreciate the response there. We got Relian R7G for 10 says, Leslie, why did you lay the deaths of girls being killed in the womb at the feet of patriarchy when your ideology is all for abortion? From your perspective, what's the problem?
Good point.
My reason for mentioning that was if you're basically saying that girl children are so much more less wanted than boy children, that there's no qualms about aborting a girl children in the fetus, and if you had to have a choice, if you had to pick, you would want to have a boy child. In other words, it doesn't mean that you're aborting a fetus because it's an unwanted child or because there are certain complications. The only reason you are aborting that child is because, well, I just want to have, I want, there's more preference for a boy child. And if you look at the ideas that contribute to why people in society want a boy child more, it's more because of attitudes that have been ingrained in us because of the patriarchy. So it's not I know what the direction that the person asking the question wants me to go into, but it's more just recognizing how much more preferred having a boy child is, or having a boy is in society versus a girl.
Okay, Jake, do you have an alternate explanation of that you want to expound on?
Yeah, well, I think that Relian did a good job there of pointing out the absurd logic here, because she said that it is a child in the womb. She said that multiple times. And if it is a child in the womb, then obviously this child has some sort of inherent dignity. And then I would also agree that we have equal dignity and that you shouldn't be killing any children. So Leslie should definitely come over to the side of being pro-life, because there are millions and millions of young women that are killed in the womb every single year. So if you do think it's a child in the womb, then Leslie, we welcome you over to this side.
Yeah, I'm pro-choice, which should be obvious since feminism
We
is
got
about choice as well.
we got that.
Yeah.
Okay. Knock Knock Night for 10 euros or pounds. Leslie, you claim the discrimination of females by abortion. Are you for the abolition of abortion? 35 million girls are getting aborted each year right now due to feminism. Well, knock knock, we kind of just covered that, so I think we answered your question.
No, I'm not for the. I'm not. I am for the to allow abortion. It's not a black and white issue.
Pretty black.
Not really.
A lot of blacks being aborted.
Why?
Lots of promiscuity, cultural problems, sex out of wedlock, these sorts of things, socioeconomic problems, these sorts of things encourage people to have abortions. 1 million blacks a year in America. I want to see
Okay.
more chocolate babies. I want to see more little Antoines and Jamichaels and Jamals and Rasputias and everything.
Oh, is that the only black people that you know?
I know a few more.
Come to mind.
I know a few more.
Okay.
I'll give you
Tupac.
time. I'll give you
Issue
time to
abortion
name
is
3
not-
more, and then we got to go to the next question.
We can discuss that.
Tupac,
Okay.
Nas, and who else? I'm gonna go Diddy.
All right, we're gonna go on to 1313 Maryland for 5 says Jesus considered men and women equal. Men getting 0 opinions from women on the decisions of the world is why we've always been in turmoil. Jake, I'm gonna let you answer that one first.
Give me the question again.
Yeah, it wasn't a question, but it's a statement I think you might disagree with. It says Jesus considered men and women equal. Men getting 0 opinions from women on the decisions of the world is why we've always been in turmoil.
Yeah, men and women are equal in their sort of ontological value. That's true. As in our dignity, we are most certainly equal. But that's doesn't mean that we have equal roles in society. That's a completely different conversation. Christianity is a very patriarchal religion, just as most religions are. Maybe New Age stuff isn't, but New Age is a crock of shit essentially. So, yeah, Christianity is a patriarchal religion. We have different roles and different sort of functions in the world, but most definitely we're ontologically equal in terms of our human dignity.
Okay, you want a quick comment on that one, Leslie?
I'm not sure what that has to do with what the person asked. I think the person was referring to the fact that the world has been in turmoil based on the decisions of the leaders of the countries that have been historically and still to present day are primarily men. So I'm not sure how that segued into a conversation about Christianity and that
You
being
said
patron.
Jesus at the start.
Especially
Well,
when you look at the fact
to be
religion is
fair-
at the root of
To be fair,
most of what's
Marilyn
wrong.
is not a Christian. She's a regular on a lot of these streams. But we'll
It's a
move
good
on.
question.
We'll move on. Workademic 6415 for 5 says, Jake, how can you be anti-feminism? If it wasn't for them same-sex couples like yourself couldn't get married. They help push your agenda and rights. Oh, cue the soundboard. I'm not allowed to do that, but
Next question.
Knock Knock Night for another 5 says the topic feminism has the problem as a
Might have been one of my chatters,
yeah, I don't know, he's trying to get one over. The topic feminism has the same problem is what I think they meant to say as abortion. No one in his right mind wants to take the quote pro side, so you have to dig up such illiterates. Oh, that's mean. There's plenty of
It
people
is hard to
who
find
debate.
feminist debaters, so I do appreciate Leslie coming out and debating it for sure.
Yeah, I don't even understand the question. So next question.
I think it's just saying it's hard to find people to debate both of those topics. But a lot of people try to debate abortion, even dudes. Workademics in another one said, Leslie, do you think Jake is more privileged than you because he prefers the same sex? Jake, do you think she's more privileged because she is a woman? Is that the same? Yeah, that's the same guy who was trying to make that same insinuation. You don't have to answer that. It's a troll.
At me or Leslie?
It was aimed at Leslie, but it's the same troll from a second ago. And it seemed like more of a sincere question this time until I saw same sex. So
Yep.
No, well,
So you
well,
got
I'll
to
just
read the
answer
questions before you
For sure, for sure.
read them out.
I'll just answer the obvious part. I think that Jake being a white male would automatically be privy to some more privilege than me. Yeah, that's it.
That's where I thought the question was going originally. And it got me.
It was a good subtle troll though. I will say I'm not sure I would have picked that one up either. So I've got to tip my hat to that questioner there. The troll was subtle.
Workademics. You're good. You're out here hustling. Okay, knock knock night says, lol, England butchered tens of millions of Indian women and children. 1943 alone, it was 3 million willingly starved people. Jake says this was good.
Yeah, he's talking about the Bengal famine, and there's some historical disputes with that one. It was during a war, so they say it's intentional. Some historians say it's not intentional. I would disagree, and I would say overall colonization of India was an amazing thing because it got rid of all of the satanic pagan practices that they were doing, and it introduced all of these different institutions that the Indians still use today. India would not be a rising power today if it wasn't for all the British institutions. They'd be basically still living in total and abject squalor and shit and burning their dung. A lot of them still do actually, but it's happening less and less. So, absolutely 100% agree that colonization of India was a good thing.
Agree, disagree. Leslie?
There's not enough time. There's not enough time for me to respond as to why I have disagreements to that. So I'll move on.
That's fair. You could also just do a quick comment too and say I have more to say, and we can talk about it another time too if you wanted to get maybe your bullet point out on the next one if there's something like that. All right, D33P for 5 says, Jake, top 3 queens.
Top 3 queens?
Yeah.
Okay. Serena Williams, probably number 1. Got that big booty. Great athlete as well. I would say, who else is a good queen out there? Maybe I want to say Kemi Badenoch. You know, she's a good queen out there running for the Conservatives. Don't love everything about her, but obviously she's like, you know, she's representing. And Leslie, you can be queen number 3 for today.
That's a dub.
I see that smile.
That's a dub. All right.
Thanks. I know that there is, but thanks anyways.
Sandbox Explorer for 5 says, for your own sake and all of ours, Leslie's, before you ever debate again, please go to Google, type in Debate University, and go to the first result. Good show. That's a good show, Sandbox. All right, so we got a couple 10s that came in a second ago. Knock those out, and then we probably only got about 4 or 5 left. If y'all want to get any last-minute ones in, we could probably wrap this up just after 10 Central Time. Jake, are you overseas right now?
Yeah, I'm in Asia at the moment.
Is it like 1 in the morning or something?
No, it's 11 a.m.
Oh, 1 in the afternoon is what I was thinking. Anyways, well, that's nice. Okay. This one was from James 575730 for 10 says, women don't like stay-at-home dads. High-earning women don't like average-earning men. Both rich and poor men like average women. Math says women are the problem, correct?
What was how are women the problem? It like if he's identifying he's attempting to identify what he thinks women like and what men like. So what is a problem that the questioner is identifying?
Jake, you wanna take that?
I didn't quite get it either.
Yeah, I can read it one more time, and then if you want to move on after that, let me know. Women don't like stay-at-home dads. High-earning women don't like average-earning men. Both rich and poor men like average women. So the math says women are the problem, correct?
All right, I get it. Look, I actually don't really agree in the sense that, like, I don't have any sort of resentment towards women for having those preferences. I think that it's natural for women to have those preferences, to look at men who are safe and who provide security and who are higher earning. But I think that the conditions that we've set for society make it a lot less feasible for that sort of hierarchical relationship to exist on a mass scale.
Okay. Did that clear it up slightly for you, rereading it, Leslie?
Yeah, I don't really have a comment to that.
Okay. Yeah, it's just pattern recognition on hypergamy, and Jake had a good response to that, so we'll go on. James says again, this is James 5757, not Dr. Coons. Both men and women prefer male bosses. Math says women bosses are the problem, correct? So the same guy, trying to identify some patterns here, get y'all's comments on them.
Yeah, I don't think that women are designed to be bosses and leaders. They lead with empathy a little bit too much, and that can be bad in terms of like the actual financial goals of a company, and also in terms of how they operate with other women, for example. Like we said before, gossip, innuendo, reputation destruction, all these sorts of things. They tend to get very jealous of other women, especially if the other women are younger and prettier than them as well. So I can completely see why women wouldn't want to have women bosses, and then for the actual outcomes of the company, it's terrible.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of stereotyping that's used to address that question. I think you also have to look at the fact that if you're looking at a society that is used to men in male dominated roles, are used to being able to see men as bosses and appreciate them as bosses and accept the tone in which their male bosses speak to them. Whereas sometimes it's harder for these same individuals, men or women, to see women in that same light. So unless you can tell me that there's data that speaks to the ineffectiveness or their lack of capabilities of female bosses versus male bosses, a lot of that is just comes to how we've been socialized to approach and interact with women in charge versus men in charge.
Happy to move on.
Yep. We got Just Me. B2Q for 10 says, Leslie, hang it up. We're right at the end of the debate anyway. Just Me, BTQ. Nathan Cummins, 6470 for 5 says, you really need to find Jake a worthy opponent. Got a fan there. Tengu Viper, number 1 Queen J Doyer. You missed out on the qualifier BIPOC queen. Is that, I believe, how he frames it.
And Andrew Wilson's black ex-wife as well.
We met her at DebateCon 8, actually.
Yeah.
R10T907 for 20. Rachel did better. She wrecked her op so bad he became a misogynist. Leslie, can you explain how explain your argument in premise form? Come on. Why did you make that incomprehensible?
That's actually a good point there by the chatter, that Rachel wrecked Brian Shapiro in the debate so badly that Brian Shapiro became a misogynist. He was already a sneaky fucker before that who was sliding into women's DMs and being very creepy and sexually harassing women. But after that debate turned him into a misogynist.
Was that referencing the women suffering thing?
Yes, exactly. Women suffering. So we've got one of the Wilsons who has actually given somebody Bell's palsy. And then Rachel Wilson has brought 2 men to tears in debates in their closing statements and turned one of them into a raging misogynist. So, W.
Okay. R10, I think, because you sent 20, I'll try to decode this. Are you asking, and I'll just say it once and see if she takes it as a question. Leslie, can you explain how to explain your argument in premise form?
Well, premise form that escapes me, so.
Okay, that answered the question.
You're asking to explain what?
Just how to break down your premises, like P1, P2,
Well, when you look at the grand scheme of things and what what are the problems in society, it's ridiculous to just focus on feminism as the problems of all society. And this is why I mentioned different things that contribute to issues in society, which is, you know, men leading different countries that have led the world into turmoil. I mentioned technology that has replaced the ability for humans to be abilities, to replace humans' ability to the point where even men are not able to be the men that they were before. A lot of that has to be with that advanced technology. I mentioned how social media has affected the way boys and girls, men and women interact. That has nothing to do with feminism, but that's had a detrimental effect that's had a detrimental effect to the mental health and of men and women. I mentioned birth discrimination and how to highlight how much more society prefers boy children over girl children. I mentioned the concept of marriage, how marriage was meant to be really women were property, and this is the time period that a lot of these men in the manosphere want us to return back to, and how again how that all is part of how masculinity and negative interpretations of masculinity have more been the problem more so than feminism, which is really all about just wanting a society where we're all equal. So I don't see how feminism is a problem when a lot of it turns to something else, or how we have created how society has more embraced negative versions of masculinity.
Okay. Jake, if you'd like to respond, you can. Otherwise, I'll read this next one, and then I'm just responding to the chat's request for me to throw up a poll before it's over. Sorry, were you muted? Did you respond?
Was I think the chatter was asking for her argument in premise form, and that didn't materialize.
Got it.
But that's fine.
Oh,
Just debate bro stuff.
That actually that does lead perfectly into the same chatter sent another 10 and said, Jake, can you put your argument in premise form? Thank you, RTN.
Okay. Premise one would be that feminism's core policies are the abdication of responsibility for women, and so leaving marriage and not having children, and sort of dismantling these patriarchal structures. Premise two would be that below average fertility rates and the decline of Western society or society in general is a negative thing, and it's not a neutral thing. Premise three would be that the downstream effects of feminism led to this, so therefore the conclusion would be that feminism is the problem.
All right. Let me just post this real quick. And as I'm doing this, I'll ask one more, which is from SSS Tone 314. Q for both. What is a woman?
A woman is
Leslie?
an adult female. An adult female.
Adult human female, I'd say the same thing.
Not controversial at all. I love it. Okay. I think there is probably one more here that I missed. Let me just double check. I don't like to leave anyone out. Let's see. I know. Hurry up and throw the poll up. I'm trying, guys. Masculinity. It's going up right now, actually. Just give me a second. Send one more super chat question if you want to get in before it's done. And then get your eyes on this poll right now, because it is posted. Wait. It's glitching. Boom. Make sure it's going up. What the heck? It should be good. Oh, okay. There's too many. Too many letters. Got it. Got it. Mod L. I know. I know. Perfect. Start poll. Go. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate both of y'all. We'll give you a quick second to shout out both of your channels. And then if we get one more chat here coming in before we hang it up, I'll give you a chance to respond. Otherwise, we'll let Jake tell us where to find you.
Rattlesnake TV, Jake Rattle SNK on X over there. Rattlesnake TV on YouTube, streaming most days. Thank you very much, Leslie Queen, for coming into the debate today. I really appreciate that. It was a robust debate, but I feel like I did actually make you smile and blush a little bit towards the end there. All of that toxic masculinity, which, yeah, you know, which we both like masculinity anyway. So thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, I like to smile, so it's very easy to make me smile. But other than that, no channels to share. Just look out for my next debate. Thank you, Jake, for agreeing to debate with me, and thank you, Modern Debate, for having me today.
Yeah, I saw. Well, let me just go ahead and let you shout out your channel real quick, Leslie. If did you tell us? Did I miss that while I was checking?
Yeah, no, I was saying no channels. Just look out for my
gotcha. Sorry, I was Crucible Crusader saying he sent a chat and that I didn't read it, but I don't think he sent it to MDD. He might be mistaken.
He should be sending it to me.
That's what. That's what I was thinking he did, and why he's saying Elmod. But I'm not reading Jake's chats, unfortunately. Maybe another time. But thank you guys so much. I think we got a good poll sample here. We're going to wrap it up for the night, guys. I just want to remind y'all, do come to DebateCon 9 in Orlando. It's going to be awesome. There's going to be a water park connected to the hotel that MDD has a link that you can get tickets to if you book your room there. I do believe there's going to be some sort of go-between if you're burnt out on debates and you want to take a quick slide. That's what we were told at DebateCon 8, so that should be pretty rad. But I do know it's hit or miss in Florida in October, but it could still be pretty hot. So we'll hope that that's the case for everyone's sake. And then thanks for watching these two. Go follow their channels if you don't. I know she doesn't got one, but keep an eye out here if she pops back on. This is the third time. Thank you for coming back, Leslie and Jake. It's always a pleasure. You guys have a wonderful night.
Take care, guys. See you later.